All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Joining me, my good friend, fellow University of North Georgia alumni down there in Tequila, Georgia, Matt Green. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It is good to be back with you. Just once a week now. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of missed you, man. It's been a while. You know, we waited a whole week in between our chats.
What were you doing on Wednesday? Was Tori just like, why are you around tonight? Like, what are you like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's true. It was, it's been a slower college football week, of course, but I'm sure I made myself busy. Wednesday's pizza night, so we're always hitting up Rosati's on Wednesdays.
How was it this week?
Oh, it's excellent as always.
Is it never not excellent, Matt Green? What would you do? Have you ever sent
There are times that it hadn't been as good, and you're like, oh, this wasn't ideal, but proof is in the pudding. They got a long track record. You get, one or two. I mean, you've been living here for like 3 years now, so a couple times it's not as good. You keep going back, and it's better the next time. You're like, I don't know why I doubted. That's how I always feel, like, oh, this wasn't good. Should we really go every week? And then you get next time, like, okay, this is why we go. This is why we do it.
Have you ever sent food back? Are you a food back guy, or would you just be like, all right, I'll pick it off and I'll be all right?
I don't. Oh, what's your definition of sending it back? Like, if they bring the wrong thing?
No. If it's not exactly 100% like what you wanted, or they left something on it that you didn't like, or it just tastes kind of wonky.
If a steak is like too rare, I've sent a steak back for being too rare. They char it back. But I'll usually try to be flexible. But I'm not above sending it back.
Not above sending it back. Yeah, I've never.
You're a paying customer, man.
It's true. That's true. I'm always terrified. And my wife and I, we watched late last night as we were falling asleep. We watched Waiting Again, which is just a classic cinematic masterpiece from the early 2000s. Man. And you just watch it and you're like, oh right, this is why you don't do any of that. Like, this is you don't F with people who take care of your food, Matt Green.
I'll say I was a busboy in a sports bar like establishment as a 16, 17-year-old.
That's young to be working in a sports bar as a busboy. All right.
Yeah, and the busboys are not completely accurately portrayed, but not completely inaccurate either in that movie. But
was that your first job?
It was. That's back in the day for sure. But I will say there's an epic story of, like, we went on this date with my brother and his wife one day. I'm not going to get into the whole story about the whole sending the food back thing, but
is this the friend of the pod brother or the other?
Yeah. Okay. Friend of the pod, Jake. We're at, I won't say the establishment, in a Mexican restaurant. And they ordered fajitas for one, him and his wife. They're like, hey, we're going to split fajitas for one. Whatever. Long story short, it's like they even asked multiple times. It's like, you sure this is fajitas for one? They're like, yeah, it's fajitas for one. Whatever. Bill comes. They charge her for the fajitas for two. And they were like, honestly, just going to pay it. And Tori's just like, fuck that. You are not paying. You're not paying for the fajitas for two. You guys said multiple times you want fajitas for one. Not your fault they brought out the fajitas for two. Manager comes out, but the epic story part of the story, that, like, the punchline, that's all I want. There's more to the story, but the funniest part is just the waiter is like, bro, you guys kind of killed the fajitas for two. It was just the funny. Oh man, I thought Tori was gonna absolutely lose her mind, but it was. I
agree with Tori, but Tori wants the smoke. Like, Tori's not afraid of the smoke, and I just never want to engage on that level. But
that's the thing, is she doesn't want it, but when it happens, she thrives. So she's in her element as soon as the conflict happened. But she honestly doesn't seek it out. But no, it was the funniest thing ever. Like, this guy, I don't know, just trying to be like, yeah, between you and me, you guys kind of killed the fajitas for two. But oh man, it was It was so funny. But no, they ended up taking it off. They only paid for the fajitas for one. But no, it was a great time.
No, they were right, because like if you
It's
ask
one of the best anecdote stories we have, honestly.
That's pretty great. And honestly, you are in the right, where it's like you ask multiple times. If they say fajitas for one multiple times and you did order it, and then you're paying, like, yeah, I'd probably be like, all right, we know what's happened here. Y'all got nervous about messing up. We were like, oh, clearly we brought out fajitas for two, and that was supposed to be fajitas for one. But like, we're gonna keep it going until the very end. Maybe they don't notice, that type of deal. And then they'll just be like, well, we did eat a lot of food, so I guess we'll go ahead and pay it, because we did actually finish it. So the waiter thought he was gonna get through on that one. My guess.
Yeah, I think so, but
not on Tori's watch.
Not on Tori's watch at all. No, she wasn't having that.
I love it. Matt Green. Well, there you go. Happy to have you back on the show again. We are doing this every Sunday night, Monday morning for the commuters, each and every week. During the off season. So as you can see in the headline, this will be our Green Coach Heat Index here going into the college football off season, because the portal is closed. Matt Green, the transfer portal is closed for I guess it's January 22nd. So we got about 4 or 5 months until it opens back up after spring ball, when guys know where they stand coming out of spring practice going into the summertime.
I think that's the next season of Stranger Things. I think they try to open the portal back up. I think that's is that, I don't know. I could be off, you know.
Is it weird that I've never watched an episode of Stranger Things? I never got into it. It's never my jam.
Oh, is that right? I felt like I was the last person that ever watched it. Like, I feel like everyone had seen it. And it was one of these things like, everyone's seen this. I feel like I saw it like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years after it came out. And then I was like, yeah, this is a quality show. And I think, what has it been, 3 seasons? I think I've watched all of it for sure. It's a quality. I recommend it. It's a quality program.
Yeah, I'm not against it. I don't remember. Like, I don't really remember why I was against it at the beginning, or I was just like, I'm always like someone who's suspicious when everyone's recommending it. And like, there are certain people, if they recommend stuff, it's like, oh, you're the person I go to when I'm like, oh, I can avoid that. I cannot read that. I can skip that. I cannot go to that restaurant. Like, you're the person, because you need people like that in your life. You need people who you don't connect with on any level, so that you can pick their brain, so you don't waste your time where you're like, oh, there's no chance.
Oh, you like that? Yeah, I didn't think I was going to like it.
Right.
That confirms it.
It's 100%. And it doesn't mean you don't like them. It just means that it's just your tastes are not going to interact. So you can save yourself a lot of time by finding some friends who have complete different tastes than you. Save you some time. But yeah, Stranger Things was one of those shows for me. I seem to recall years ago.
The peer pressure never got me to watch Game of Thrones, though. Could never
See, I read Game of Thrones first, so that was the whole thing. I was already in Potter, Thrones. That's my jam. I'm into that kind of stuff.
There you go.
For sure. Matt Green, Nigel the Nighthawk, our old friend, has dropped some news and nuggets before we get into our hot seat rankings for some big time college football coaches going into this 2023 college football season. Still got a ways away. We just wrapped up, but you know. It's a year-round sport. It's a daily sport, Matt Green. New stuff popping up every day. I'm sending you Nico Iamaleava highlight reels of him in the Polynesian Bowl this weekend, looking like Colt Brennan with the visor and the Hawaii-looking helmet. Top-notch stuff.
You saw who he threw that touchdown to, though, sir.
Zachariah Branch?
That was the long, like the 60-yard one.
Deuce Robinson?
Deuce Robinson. He's announcing, I think, like, on early signing day, all the crystal balls coming into Georgia to get the number 1 tight end in the country. Is he from Vegas or is he from California?
I think he's one of the West Coast. Yeah, it's something like that. Somewhere in the West Coast, yeah.
But yeah, so he's big time.
Yeah, it was a big time game. But Nico's got some legs, 50-yard run at one point. Just Mark Richt, your dude, raving about him in his leadership. So he's pro Nico. Everything's coming up Nico in Tennessee, as you well know. And you know what happens on Wednesday night, Matt Green? It's unfortunate we're not doing our Wednesday pods anymore until the new season. Do you know what happens on Wednesday night?
What's that?
See, this is how I know. Tennessee's in everything school. Georgia back in hibernation. Tennessee, Georgia is Wednesday night in basketball. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. After Tennessee
in Knoxville?
It is in Knoxville.
Yeah, the Dogs lost first home game of the season. This was that on Saturday. Vanderbilt. That was a close one. But
You know who didn't
yeah,
lose to Vanderbilt? It's Volunteers.
that's true. But we're winning national championships, and I think that's all you can ask for. And winning, I saw someone's rankings out there had Mike White as a top 5 hire so far of this of the first year head coaches. Had him ranked ahead of John Shire on the first year head coach list. So and ahead of the guy that Florida got. So what does that say about what Florida's doing right now?
There you go. You gotta get the breadcrumbs.
Jordan, it's moving in the right direction. They're like 14-4, 14-5. They're moving. I think they won like 9 games last year. So Georgia basketball. I'll be in there. I'll be in the Stegosaurus on Saturday for the South Carolina game.
But you are avoiding the Tennessee game. You're not making the trip up to Knoxville to see.
I am not making that trip.
No. Here's the funny thing about Saturday. Do you know who where College Game Day is going on Saturday, Matt Green?
Where's that?
You guessed it. Tennessee. Everything School HQ. Tennessee, Texas. Saturday in
Tennessee, Texas. Is that right?
Yeah. Saturday.
Good stuff.
It's going to be good. I think they're the first team to host College Game Day in women's basketball, in men's basketball, and college football all in the same season. First college sports team ever to do it.
Well, that's enough Tennessee talk, for one podcast.
Just facts, though. These aren't even opinions, man. I'm just giving you factoids, and all of our recruiter listeners, like Deuce Robinson. What are we doing?
Well,
you had Nico throwing you bombs. Why would you want to go to?
About to rank number 1, right?
Who?
Alabama.
They're about to, yeah, because Houston just lost. They are about to be number 1.
That number 1 sounds more like an everything school to me than.
Have you seen that baseball program? Do you know who we just pulled from their baseball program? Zane Denton, the best player on Alabama this past year. He is now a Tennessee Volunteer and will be playing baseball for the Vols. The preseason number 2 team in the country, Matt Green. Just everything school HQ.
We shall see.
Walker Howard. So this is my favorite, just chaos part. Getting back to some news items before we get into this. Walker Howard, premier prospect, 4 or 5 stars, depending on who you look at. Because that's annoying, by the way, too, right? Like everyone just flips this based on whether or not it helps or hurts your school. Like whenever you have these conversations or I see it on Twitter, it's always like if a team's report, like a team blog's reporting it, the player's a 5-star and they're going with the one who has them that way. And then if it's another one, it's like a 4-star. It's very hard to keep up with because everyone's using their own rankings. And if it's an On3 site, they're using their On3 rankings. If it's a 247 site, they're using 247. But
I feel like because there's, just to defend that, because there's like 354 stars, even if you're writing a 24/7 article and ESPN has this guy as a 5-star, it's like, it kind of does distinguish him a little bit that, hey, somebody thinks he's a 5-star. I do like that On3's come out with the 5-star plus or whatever. I think it's a stupid name, but like unanimous consensus 5-star essentially is what it's for. So right. I do like that. It kind of separates those guys.
For sure. Well, like I said, Walker Howard, premier LSU product, freshman, he entered the portal and then he transferred, Matt Green, to Ole Miss, which I think caught a lot of people by surprise because Ole Miss has a quarterback who can be their quarterback for this season, and another one, Jaxson Dart, who started all this past year. Luke Altmaier went in the portal, and he is now going to be the starter in Champaign for the Fighting Illini. But that wasn't all they did. They also added Spencer Sanders in the portal, Matt Green. I think there's not going to be a more fascinating spring than what's going on at Ole Miss. Like, that is top-notch stuff. I don't know why Spencer Sanders left under these circumstances, because I don't think he's the favorite to start, and he's probably, I don't know. Like, I think this is all extremely strange. Clearly, like, Lane is not all the way sold on what he saw from Jaxson Dart this past year, but I don't know. What do you make of Howard coming in the building and Spencer Sanders with Jaxson Dart this spring?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think it's definitely surprising because Jaxson Dart was solid, but I agree. I wasn't sold on him necessarily. So he left some room to be desired, right? But Spencer Sanders coming in, though, you would think a guy who's, I assume only has 1 year, but I mean, who really knows with COVID and guys getting extra years and stuff. But he seems like a guy who just has one last shot to elevate his game. And like, I mean, Oklahoma State is still a good team. I would think. I wouldn't think they're just falling off the face of a cliff, even though they kind of did last season. So it was kind of weird to see him be transferring from the get-go. But to go to Ole Miss, somewhere where it's not really a guaranteed spot, like JT Daniels going to like a West Virginia, somewhere where he knew he was going to start, and then obviously that didn't work out, and he went down a level somewhere he knew he was going to start again. Like, this isn't what that is. So with Spencer Sanders, like with Walker Howard, it's like, okay, maybe you just like, okay, I don't want to be at LSU, I'm going somewhere else. With Spencer Sanders, seems like his one shot to play. So I do think he's better than Jaxson Dart. If like I'm just taking what these guys did in 2022, I'm taking Spencer Sanders over Jaxson Dart. Especially since they're kind of similar players. Spencer Sanders seems like just a better version of Jaxson Dart. So, how many more years is? I mean, I guess, Sanders could come in and Jaxson Dart still has a year or two to start after that. That's probably not what's going to happen just in today's landscape. If he loses that job, he's probably going to go transfer somewhere else. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. And then, I mean, maybe Ole Miss is set up even better with like a senior and a sophomore or redshirt freshman, setting up that 2023 roster.
Yeah, and it looks like Alan Bowman's going to be the starting quarterback at Oklahoma State next year. Like, he entered the portal, and he was number 3 on the depth chart at Michigan this past year. He obviously started as a freshman at Texas Tech, but it's been a long time since Alan Bowman's been able to both stay healthy and be a really good player in the sport. But he's back to the Big 12. Maybe that'll help a little bit for him. But I don't know, that quarterback room, and Oklahoma State's lost a lot of players in the portal, so I think they need to be pretty active, especially post-spring ball for Gundy's group. But yeah, I don't know. My gut tells me, because Spencer Sanders went there, I think he beats out Jaxson Dart in the spring. I think he wins the job, and Dart might be elsewhere by post spring. Like, he might be in the portal, and then it's just Walker Howard after Spencer Sanders does 1 year in Oxford this fall. That's my gut. I think Spencer Sanders has shown a lot more than Jaxson Dart to this point.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And so, we'll see what happens. I think Ole Miss definitely shouldn't look at their 2022 season and say, okay, let's let this
our
group
guy
improve. Yeah, it's like they got a lot to improve on. And I mean, the running game was great. So, I mean, you got to think a better quarterback, actual passer could definitely take that offense to the next level.
Jalen Rashada, he is now out of his national letter of intent from the University of Florida. This has obviously been a gigantic story, both at UF and in college football as a whole. Matt Green, like, this is still a developing story where he ultimately ends up. Looks like he's going to go back to the West Coast. He's a West Coast kid. The reported figures being, 13 million in total for Rashada if he had stuck with it and the NIL deal had not fallen through or been whatever happened here. I hope we get to know for sure what the final for sure factual fallout was here, and what actually is real and what's not, with why this all went south so quickly. But embarrassing for the Gators nonetheless. I think at the very least there's a lot of problems clearly with NIL at the University of Florida at this point. I saw a tweet where it's like, of course, Florida would struggle with like NIL stuff when they bring in one of the best recruiters in the Southeast, and Billy Napier. So it's like you're fumbling the bag with this thing that, like, Billy Napier was brought in because he recruits really well, has spent like a bunch of guys on staff. Like, you remember that picture from last year for their team photo, which is like a third coaches and stuff, where he's like put all this investment in recruiting and just on-field coaches and all that sort of thing. And Dan Mullen was the one who specialized in the, like, I'm not really worried about the NIL and the other stuff. Like, my system's better. Like, we'll beat them with my guys, and I'm smarter than them, and I'll outwork them and stuff. And now the recruiting's just blowing up in this way. I mean, Cormani McClain, obviously, too, not ending up at UF. He's going to Colorado. We'll talk about it in a second, but I don't know, man. This is bad, and it's going to be the Graham Mertz show for the full season now. Jack Miller did not look good in that bowl game against Oregon State. I think this is going to be really bad for Billy Napier and company in year 2. This is a bad look as a whole. I wonder what the fallout is in recruiting for them going into next year. But man, this I don't know. What do you make of this for the University of Florida first and foremost?
Well, especially because this NIL landscape is so brand new. It's like if the collective is kind of how each of these programs is going to get some sort of booster led like money filtering to players somehow. If that's going to be the system that everybody uses, like, or for the most part, you don't know what any of these programs are really going to do. You don't know that any of them are worth what they're going to say, right? But you know Florida has reneged or done something in some way a deal fell through. So it's like just from a PR perspective on, you know, what this means to future recruits is like almost incalculable at this point, because it's like you just heard that bad press that they got. Essentially, you're like, well, you know, there's a lot of programs, you know, not in all of college football, but you know, that are essentially Florida's level of program, you know, the top 15, 20 programs in the country that if I'm being talked to by all of these, well, I might rule out that one just from the get-go because of what happened with their NIL stuff. If, like you said, we ever figure out what actually happened, it's just kind of bizarre, you know, to get released from the scholarship. This guy obviously flipped his recruit commitment a couple of times, like Miami, Florida. We no one really knew where he was going to go, and now for Florida to land him and get him signed, and that's still not enough. You can just something can fall through again. It's got to be frustrating from a Florida perspective, because I mean, is this something you can even blame on Billy Napier? Like, is this something that the collective did that's kind of out of his hands? Like, it's hard to say. So it's super demoralizing, because you look at someone like a Josh Heupel, where obviously he had success and like the offense was like fun, and it was at least like you felt good about the team moving forward, even though they only went 7-6 year one, right? But with Napier, it's like the on field was just so bad. But it's like, okay, it's year one, and then you landed this big time recruit going into year 2. It's like a quarterback can just change so much of a program. So for that guy to fall through, it's like now Florida just has nothing to really hang their hat on. No real reason to be positive, like, at all. So it's tough. And at this point, like, I kind of wonder, when you wait so many quarterbacks seem to be the first in their class to commit, and they kind of want to try to build the class. Like, after signing day, now there's so many spots that are taken. Obviously, if you're a guy like Jaden Rashada, you think you're as good as anybody. You're a big time 5-star, and you can go just about anywhere and play. But I think it does, you know, maybe shrink, and, you know, and maybe in the year of the portal, it doesn't matter. You can go wherever in 1 year and then just transfer to where you really want to be. But I think it does kind of, you know, shrink the potential schools that he could potentially land at.
Yeah, I guess it looks like it's the decision's like either Arizona State, which seems like most likely they have a big need there, or
he's visiting TCU as well, and I think Cal might even get a visit or something. So I don't know. That's a little different than Florida and Miami. Also, TCU is just in the national championship game, but you know, traditionally they don't necessarily recruit the same level of prospects.
Well, they've done this before. Remember Zach Evans, the 5-star, where it fell through at Georgia, and everyone couldn't believe that it fell through at Georgia. He wound up at TCU. So you never know. You never know, Matt Green. But either way, I think if you're a Florida fan, you're very nervous about where things are headed. And it's like someone pointed this out, and I forgot who it was on Twitter, and I thought this was something that people forget and overlook when it comes to Florida. Is like, if you remove the Spurrier and Urban Meyer runs, like, it's been mostly like this dysfunction and underachieving and just kind of a mess for the football program, outside of 2 top 10, top 5 coaches of all time being the head honchos there.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I don't know if we want to get all the way into this. We're going to wait till our head coaching.
Yeah, we can save it.
But yeah, it's not nearly the juggernaut that we're kind of used to growing up against and just dreading playing every season.
No, not at all. Macri and Cormani McClain, late announcement, but he did announce that he is also going to play football, at least for this season, at the University of Colorado Boulder. I mean, here's the thing. Like, there's some weird stuff going on where it's like the Coach Brewster stuff where everyone's got to take on that one with the stand-up, sit-down stuff that got posted. I think he posted it himself. And I don't know. It's just so fascinating. Like, I don't have a take on it really yet because I want to see what they look like on the field, and I'm just going to reserve all judgment until I see what this looks like at the Power 5 level. But I mean, it's so fascinating, right? Like, Cormani McClain winds up, Dion gets the number one corner in back-to-back recruiting classes, like with Travis Hunter and Cormani McClain, and both guys really late in the process, kind of he snags them late. And I don't know, like it's asking a lot. I think one of the things that people are going to miss here is that, like, he did bring in a bunch of transfers, but this is still mostly the guys before. Like, this is what people are forgetting is, like, you still have to look at the whole group. And he's not going to play a bunch of freshmen only in the Pac-12, the Power 5. Like, Travis Hunter will obviously play, but like Cormani McClain will get snaps. But as you know, as a Georgia,
they'll play a lot of freshmen just because they don't have that many bodies, I'm afraid.
Well, you'll lose. Like, that's the other part of it. It's just like freshmen, it takes time to develop, and corner's a hard position to just throw some guys in there. Like, Tennessee has been very careful with throwing in the young guys. Georgia doesn't do it unless it's like a Malachi Starks type. Maybe in linebackers, you sit for a couple years and learn the system and grow your body. Like, that's the other thing is, like, getting in the Power 5 meal plan and weight room, you just build and just get so much bigger over the course of 1 to 2 years at that level, just be with the facilities and what you have at your disposal to grow as a player.
Both of these guys are like 6 feet, 165 coming out of high school, like Travis Hunter and Cormani McClain. Like, I'm super dynamic athletes, but not the biggest bodies at all. But this Colorado is now one of 10 schools in college football to sign a 5-star in each of the last 2 classes. So Dion changing the game, bringing in Travis Hunter and Cormani McClain. I don't know. It's crazy. I don't know if you saw, they just released the Pac-12 schedule, I think, like earlier this week. And
I didn't see it.
Like, looking at Colorado's, it's like they're probably going to have to win. I'd probably say 2 or 3 games that they're not favored for to probably make a bowl game next year. Like, it's not an easy schedule.
Oh, this schedule. I'm looking at it now. This is rough.
I mean, TCU shouldn't be nearly as good next year as they were this year, but I think TCU is definitely going to be favored over Colorado. Like, they don't have a cupcake out of conference.
I mean, Colorado State's cupcake. They were one of the worst programs in America last year.
That's true. That's probably the one.
Which is not good. You don't want that to be your one cupcake. Is another P5 group of 5 school, not even like a low level MAC or something. Now you're at Arizona State. I mean, I guess it's good that you get Colorado at home, but like at UCLA, at Wazoo, at Utah, at Oregon.
Yeah, I don't know, there's a lot of good teams in the Pac-12 next year.
This looks like a 3-9, 4-8 max to me.
Yeah, I mean, because like Stanford shouldn't be very good. Like, Arizona State's not very good.
Oregon's
it's like you have to win. You have to win all of those. Like, Nebraska's not very good, but it's like you have to win all of those games. Colorado's like the worst team in Power 5. Like 130th in like a lot of stats, like defensive stats and things like that. So it's like a lot of toss-up game. It's like it'll be.
Yeah, I think when it comes to year one, like, expectations, it's like I believe in Dion and this process, and I believe in what he's building and the guys he's getting, but I would be surprised with year one, especially with the schedule. I think that's just a bunch of turnover, but it also might just depend on like how good is Shador right away, right? Like, if he was a 4-star kid, a lot of guys wanted him, a lot of universities wanted him coming out of high school, obviously following his dad at Jackson State. But like, if he's the real deal, like if he's really good right away in this scheme with Sean Lewis, then they're gonna surprise some folks. Like 6-6, like that's the goal if you're a Buffs fan right now, and if you're Dion, like you want to get to a bowl game. That's it. Year one is you just want to get to 6-6, 7-5, something like that. 7-5 is with this schedule would be pretty good, especially with 1-11 last year. It's still going to be a lot of guys from that team that really struggled last year. So I don't know. We'll see. Where expectations will be a lot higher, I think, is where A.D. Mitchell has flipped to Matt Green. He is now a Texas Longhorn. What do you make of A.D. Mitchell departing the wide receiver room at Georgia, and how does it change the wide receiver room going forward?
This one stings, man. A.D. Mitchell caught a touchdown pass in every college football playoff game he's played in, which for Georgia is 4 in his 2 years on campus. So one thing I listened to the Cover 3 podcast, and I feel like these guys just swung and missed when they talk about A.D. Mitchell, honestly. Like, all I heard them say was like, oh yeah, Georgia does run the ball a lot. Like, as if Georgia wasn't second in the SEC in pass attempts this past year, as if they didn't have a top 10, top 15 passing offense like in college. Like, the guy had 9 catches because he played in like 5 games last year, and he caught a touchdown in almost every game he played, like the Oregon game, Ohio State, TCU. Like, I know he has a kid and he's from Texas, so maybe it's something, it's the NIL. We live in the NIL era now, so it's like if a guy's going to the portal because he can get paid somewhere else, it's like that's a thing that's going to happen. So I can't imagine on the field see anything of A.D. Mitchell's experience being like, the Georgia's just not good enough. It's just we don't pass the ball. Like, this man got the ball when he played. Like that Ohio State game, it was like the first game he was healthy in a while, and this man caught the ball like twice on the first possession of the game. It's like he was a huge part of the offense. So I think, knowing Kirby Smart, I think it's just like his just roster management, I feel like, is what I'll always just be kind of in awe of Kirby Smart about. Like, to the offseason, he brought in Jamie Newman, and to also bring in JT Daniels like that same offseason, like, was kind of a really weird thing that happened. And for JT Daniels to end up starting 4 games but in that season, like, that's just one of those moves that he's made that I feel like he's just kind of always steps ahead. And to bring in one of the better receivers in the SEC, like Rod Thomas or Dominic Lovett, would have been one thing. But to bring in 2 of them when you weren't really losing any of your key receivers, it makes me wonder if Kirby Smart knew something ahead of time, that like A.D. Mitchell, he's a guy who he might go back home to Texas or something. Maybe there's just kind of whispers of something like that, because it seemed kind of weird for 2 of the better receivers in the SEC to both choose Georgia when Ladd McConkey's back, when A.D. Mitchell's back, when Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint is back. It's like, as well as the tight, Darnell Washington's gone, but Bowers is still back. It's like all the same touches, all the touches can't be the same if you're bringing in 2 receivers like Rod Thomas and Dominic Lovett. So it's definitely unfortunate for A.D. Mitchell, because he was just, for me as a fan personally, because I feel like A.D. Mitchell was just one of those guys. I'd probably say, short of A.J. Green and George Pickens, I think A.D. Mitchell might be the next best Georgia receiver in terms of just like actual like raw NFL ability. Like, Georgia's had some good receivers like a Malcolm Mitchell or Tavares King or some Mecole Hardman, Terry Godwin or something. But like, other than Mecole Hardman, none of those guys really had big time NFL projections. Riley Ridley was like a 3rd rounder. Like, just a lot of like solid college players. A.D. Mitchell seems like he has that ability to actually be an NFL player, like unlike basically every other Georgia receiver. They just kind of barely made a roster, minus AJ Green and George Pickens. So yeah, I think it's a big loss. I think luckily Georgia's gonna get a couple guys in the portal at receiver, but I hate to see AD Mitchell go.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what this route looks like, because I mentioned to you about the Ladd stuff that you're pushing back on, but I'm curious where he fits in with this group, and with Darnell being out, and
You said he had arthritis. He does have arthritis.
He is, whatever it is, needs tinnitus, arthritis. But they were saying on the broadcast, as you went back, and I sent you the tweets. It was something I jotted down where I was like, man, they're killing this kid's draft stock on this live broadcast. Where like he has to get pain injections or something, what they were saying, to manage so he could play, so he's not feeling anything in his knee.
Was that just I think that was just a temporary thing, because he just hurt his
knee.
I
don't know. Like, I don't know
versus
what's
LSU in the SEC
he
championship.
just
I
had
mean,
an
like,
ailing knee, and they did say, like, he had the knees of, like, a 60-year-old or something. That was something that was I remember, like, I don't remember the exact age, but it was older. It was like he has the knees or whatever, but either way, what I'm saying is, like,
McConkey's a playmaker, so
I like
maybe
McConkey.
Todd
He's a good
Gurley was a
player.
playmaker too, and apparently had like some sort of degenerative knee thing. So if he's got something like that going on, I don't know. But McConkey's definitely
He's a good
he's
player.
definitely
Does he
the
start next year,
quickest,
though?
fastest. I mean, I think so, and I don't think anything's really changing with his role. Obviously, like you're
Lovett's gonna be in the
bringing.
slot. Where does he go?
He's going to be on the field. Like
I don't
McConkey's
think he
been
starts opening
one of the
possessions.
top
I think he's
two.
worked in.
I mean, they did lose AD Mitchell at the same time, though. So I mean, you're going to play three receivers a lot of the
Right, but
time.
one's gonna be
So
Arian Smith. He was mostly on the outside, wasn't he?
I mean, Arian Smith has played like 7 games in his 3 years at Georgia. So it's
True.
like I don't think anyone's really counting on Arian Smith for
But what would you
anything. But
guess? So if you had to guess, like, who's on the 2 outside spots? It's
who gets
Ra
the
on
most
1.
spots? Who gets
It's
the most snaps? I
yeah, so
mean,
it's
Marcus
Ra.
Rosemy, Jack Saint. But I mean,
Yeah,
McConkey did a lot of that outside receiver stuff. I mean,
true.
he's a guy who does go deep, like catch screens or whatever. So I mean, he's a well-rounded receiver. So I don't think he's like just a slot guy, even though he obviously looks like a lot of the slot guys, the Cole Beasley types, if you will, real industrious players. But
But I think you'll get more out of Dominic Lovett at that spot.
I mean, Ra Thomas and Dominic Lovett have definitely produced more in college.
In worse
Um,
situations.
and that's true, but at Georgia, there is something to blocking and doing all that. And Rosemy Jack Saint has been a really good blocker, and he's a guy who makes catches. He's good for like 2 or 3 catches every game, and he's shown some ability. He's not like a superstar or anything. Like Rosemy Jack Saint is that like that's the typical caliber of like a Georgia receiver. I feel like the Riley Ridleys, Michael Bennett's of the world. They're just like, this is a really solid receiver. He doesn't seem like a superstar in any way, but he's just a really solid receiver. If Ra Thomas and Lovett have that ability to make big plays, like they'd definitely be on the field. But I mean, with injuries and everything that happens, like I think you got to have 4 capable receivers on any roster. So to have those top 4, and I'm not even including Arian Smith in that, who's just like the ultimate X factor. So to go over with Brock Bowers and Oscar Delp, like I think Georgia will be fine when it comes to playmakers.
I think they'll be fine too. I'm just interested to see where the snaps go and what that looks like. Because Tennessee is a totally different thing. Where like Tennessee only plays 3 receivers all game long. Like they do 3 only, and that's just how it works. Like there's no rotation in that regard. It's the 3 who start, and that's how they go. And UJ is not like that. So I'm just curious to see how they manage those snaps. There's an understanding that like week in, week out, this is the 3 starters. This is the 3 guys who are playing 70 snaps or whatever.
Yeah, and Georgia's definitely not been that like ever. It's almost like any game you just have no idea who they don't until Bowers. It feels like Bowers is like the only guy that's like you got to get this man the rock. Other than that, so many, and even him, they don't really just feed it to him like necessarily I would. I feel like he's got to touch the ball 10, 15 times every game. Like hand it to him 5 or 6 times if you need to. But like in terms of just how Georgia kind of manages receivers, it doesn't really the leading receivers end up with 30 40 catches and 400 or 500 yards, and they kind of spread it out a little bit, and I think you're going to see probably more of that in 2023. So Lovett does seem like the one that's got the biggest upside, but he also he's learning a new system. Ra Thomas is learning a new system. So Ra Thomas seems like the one, like he's the guy that's on the outside that I think can make a play like a one-on-one. And I think that's kind of, irreplaceable. If you have a guy that can do that on the outside, I think you can earn a lot of snaps that way. So if I had to, gun to my head, pick a guy to get the most snaps in the receiver room, like I really don't know. Like Rosemy Jack Saint is who I start to say just because he's like proven at Georgia, but one of the new
Arian
guys.
Smith should get a bunch of snaps just because he's terrifying on the end. Like he's
the
terrifying.
Last one I would pick because this man's always injured. But yeah, I mean he's got that big playability. He's got that legit track speed. Like he might be like literally the fastest player in college football. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's got the Jalen Hyatt thing where it's like if he's in the field every game, that's how it should be. Like his 247 comp was DJ Moore. Like the dude should be the leader in snaps. I think if you're doing it
I
based
think
on,
if he's healthy, then
Yeah.
I think he's definitely up there. He's in that conversation. I think McConkey tries to get pigeonholed, like you said, with being like a slot guy. Like he's an all around receiver, and he makes plays after the catch. Like he does a lot of things. Hits people. He's hitting so many people with those double moves.
But it's fair to say, like, this is a
deep balls.
deeper wide receiver room for him next year. Like, that's my biggest thing. Is like, this is a deeper room for him to compete with. The receiver room was not as deep and more unproven this past year for him to thrive. He's going to have more
true.
comp.
With AD Mitchell out all year, like it was definitely a little light. It was a lot of decent, solid players.
There's a reason they went to McIntosh and Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington close. Like, there was a reason that Kenny McIntosh had so many receptions.
Or is the reason you went to McIntosh, Bowers, and Washington because those were your three best players?
Maybe,
like those guys. Those are Bowers should lead the team in catches, and McIntosh. Like I think McIntosh showed like he's an NFL running back. Like the way he caught the ball out of the backfield. So
for sure,
I think those were the best player. Were those the best playmakers because the receivers weren't as good? It's like that might have contributed some to McIntosh's production, but Bowers, it doesn't matter who your receivers are. Bowers should get the rock all the time.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm curious. It's going to be more interesting. Georgia, I can't believe I'm saying this. It's going to be a lot more interesting to watch next year because there's so many new faces. Carson Beck, new running back, new receivers, new.
And Beck's not just a foregone conclusion either. I think Beck's definitely got the lead, but with Vandegrift and Gunnar Stockton, like all those guys were highly recruited. So you heard about Gunnar Stockton in the bowl prep, right?
No.
In the national championship prep. Gunnar Stockton told coach, I want to be in the real jersey. Took off the non-contact jersey so that he could help the team prep for Max Duggan. Getting his Stetson Bennett. That's Stetson Bennett's the start of his origin story. There you go. Stetson Bennett's origin story is the play in Baker Mayfield for scout team. So Gunnar Stockton was playing Max Duggan for the scout team, took off getting his Faton Bauta on. That's the last time I heard of a Georgia quarterback taking off the non-contact jersey. And we all know how good Faton Bauta was.
Man, bring him back. That was a more enjoyable time for me watching Georgia football.
That was a one game era. I don't know. That's when Mark Richt phoned it in. He was like, you guys, I don't know what to do. Florida game, throw out Faton Bauta. Who knows what'll happen? Didn't take him out. Let him just play the entire game.
People have been comparing him to Tim Tebow forever.
Never played him again. Like, he didn't get like a snap before that game. Didn't get a snap after. It was like, okay. Grayson Lambert, I think, ended up like 10-1 or something as a starter because he didn't have that Florida loss that year. But yeah, it was an interesting experiment.
Last thing before we get into our Green Coach Heat Index, Matt Green, can Alabama fans rep Jalen Hurts? You wanted to throw this out here because you want chaos, Matt Green. You don't want people to enjoy things. Make the case, Matt Green.
The AD Mitchell, that was the segue because honestly, I'm embarrassed to be a Georgia fan on Twitter this week with this damn good dog stuff. #GGD. It's a thing that Georgia fans do that it's like, oh yeah, he's damn good dog. It's like he's a great player for Georgia. He's beloved, may not have been All-American, but gave everything to the university. That whole spiel, and then so now it's like AD Mitchell's transferring. He's damn good dog. It's like he's not a damn good dog. He transferred. He's not a dog, whatever. So it just got me thinking about now I've seen this Jalen Hurts stuff. What was the stat? Some ESPN, someone had the stat of first Alabama quarterback to win a playoff game since like 1983. And it's like, well, hold on. Jalen Hurts isn't an Alabama quarterback. Like AD Mitchell's going to Texas now. Like I'll forever love AD Mitchell. I'll remember his career fondly. As Alabama fans should love Jalen Hurts. Like, got beat out, still stuck it out and had that clutch SEC championship performance as the backup. But he left Alabama and he became an Oklahoma player. Like he is like you look at the roster, it's Jalen Hurts, Oklahoma. And especially in his specific situation, he wouldn't be in the NFL if he didn't go to Oklahoma. Like what he did at Alabama, like that guy wasn't an NFL quarterback. Like he was solid in college, but he wasn't There's a reason he got beat out, right? Like, but when he went to Oklahoma, like, not only did he have the best rushing season of his career, he had by far the best passing year. I was like, who is this guy? Like, this is why I questioned Jalen Hurts at Alabama, because he didn't ever play like he did at Oklahoma. So it's like him specifically, it's like Oklahoma is what turned him into an NFL quarterback, as far as I'm concerned. So on the roster, he's got Oklahoma there. And like AD Mitchell, as I love him, but he's going to get drafted next year, and it's going to be wide receiver AD Mitchell, Texas. He's not a dog anymore. So I don't like this Alabama repping AD Mitchell. What say you? Or repping Jalen Hurts. What say you?
What I say is a more broader thing that we're now going to have to deal with, Matt Green. With the portal era, can I say that I feel bad for these kids now? They're not going to feel it yet, but they're going to feel it like 10 years from now, where they don't have like a home, like a college home, where they can't come back and like do cool tours and be beloved by like one town and one university forever. Where like it's hard for a 20-year-old, 21-year-old to see that and think about that kind of legacy and like what happens after football and like the 15 to 20 years. But like you see that with all the Georgia players. You see it with all like I see it here at Tennessee, like Jason Swain obviously has a sports radio show here. Will Overstreet could have transferred around, but he's on the sports Sunday Sports Source show. He pops in. Ron Slay pops in. Like Peerless Price can come up. He's popping in. But like you have the same thing in Georgia, where I'm like, I feel bad for these kids, because I think one of the things that they're going to find later in life is like those connections too, that they're not going to have, because they're going to bounce around from school to school, where it's like, if you're like you said, a DGD and at one particular school and you're pretty solid there, you're going to make a lot of connections. You can go back after you graduate and like after your football career is over, and you'll have all these connections to be like, hey, I went to UGA, I'm going to use this pipeline and all these different influencers to help me find what's next. That sort of thing. Like you'll be in that, you're in the family, right? For a long time.
I think those known like connections, I think will kind of still be there. Cause I think from like a player coach perspective, it's like they think of it totally different than fans. Like I remember Justin Fields was like at like some Georgia scrimmage, like the year after he transferred. And it was just like, the players are probably like, yeah, we came in at the same time. We're boys. Kirby's like, yeah, recruit him. Love the kid, love the family, all that stuff. So it's like, oh, anything you need, I'll help you, whatever you need. It's like, you're always a friend of mine, that sort of thing. But I feel like it's like the unknown connections of just like just some random Georgia person that's just, oh, I would love to give Tavares King a shot to do. He played for this school for 4 or 5 years or something. It's like, it's that stuff that I think, you'll miss out on. Like the hype videos Georgia makes in week out, week in and week out, that like Garrison Hurst or something will be like a random narrator. It's like, you're not going to be doing that stuff. You had the game winning catch in the national championship for Georgia. Like one of the more memorable moments in the history of the football program. But now it's going to say Texas next to your name when you go to the pros. And it's like, you're not going to be like, some 20-year anniversary championship team. Yeah, you might be there, but like, you're not going to be the guy signing autographs that everyone wants to. You're not going to be narrating the hype videos. Like, you're not going to be. There's going to be things that you miss out on. You're not just going to be, universally beloved. It's going to be some people that are like, oh yeah, but he transferred. The him and Haw kind of stuff. So it's not
going to be a career.
It's not unconditional love.
No. And I think that's like part of the deal. If like you do it, like it's just no one's faulting you for it. Like I get it. I get why, and we'll see what he does. I mean, he'll have a good opportunity there. He'll probably, look, I think playing with Quinn Ewers and or Arch Manning, it's gonna be pretty cool. And I understand why he's doing it. But like you said, like if it's a 1-year thing, it just kind of clouds it. Where I also wonder, would his draft stock really change all that much spending that final year at Georgia versus that final year at Texas? If that's how it goes, it's like, I don't know, like these interconference moves too, where I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, are we sure? And I don't know. It's just hard for me to just tell. I don't want to tell a kid what he should and shouldn't do. And these kids are making the best decisions they possibly can. And it's tough and complicated. I'm sure there's so many contributing factors behind the scenes that we'll never be privy to or understand and know. But like, I think we're on the same page here. And you mentioned players are understand. And I think that's true by and large. Players do. But the coaches will talk about it where it's like it does. I think Kirby's talked about it where it just kind of sucks of like these kids are gonna who bounce around a little bit don't have that. Like if you stay at Georgia, even if you don't become a star or whatever, like you got to remember too, most of these guys who play at even Georgia are not going to last very long in the NFL. Most won't get drafted. Most won't pan out. But if you stay in the system and with NIL being pretty good, I think across the board at Georgia, you still have this stuff to fall back on where you're just kind of beloved, like you said, when you go back to Athens or you run into people and they're like, oh, are you AD Mitchell was part of the title team and all that for
Yeah.
years? Like you'll get that for 40 years after you graduate and you tell someone who you are. You're like, oh yeah, you were awesome at that time. Like and then you never know what door that opens for you professionally, personally, whatever. But if it's kind of clouded and it's like you're sitting at home, like who do you even cheer for? Like when you're older and your playing days are done, are you like, I'm a Texas guy, I'm a Georgia guy? Like what
Yeah.
even am I? Like what's my identity?
Like if I'm putting together my all UGA team
Yeah.
on Madden in a few years, I need quarterback depth. I might throw Jacob Eason on there.
Mm.
I might throw AD Mitchell on there because like, he played. We'll try to, have some leeway or something. But yeah, just from like I don't know, remembering like being remembered like an all-time great, like it's just not really going to be that way. Like Kirby Smart's always going to have love for him. And maybe he came to him months ago. He's like, hey man, I really want to be closer to my family, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And he's just like, totally understand, do your thing. And there's no love lost. Like that's probably more the case. But
For
from a
sure.
fan perspective, it's just like, nah, man, you're not on our team anymore. It says you got a different name in a different college in your profile now.
Yeah.
It's over.
And I mean, yeah, that's just what it is. It's gonna complicate it. And it's another thing that just hurts the sport, I think, and it hurts the fans. It's good for the players, I get it, and that's great, but it does kind of hurt because it's just you're like, man, that kind of stinks. And I think if you asked a lot of the Georgia alums and the Georgia guys who had okay careers and all that after the fact, but like none of them are like, man, made a mistake, like with sticking around and doing what I did. Cause like if you talk to Peerless or any of these guys, like I think they would all tell you like it's pretty cool to just be like beloved all time by this fan base and have this one just this part of my life that's like there's no doubt that this was like awesome part of my life and like I am a Vol forever. Like that was it. Like that's how
Yeah.
people remember me is like that. It's not like, well, he was a Vol for a little bit and then he was an Indiana Hoosier and then he was a Wake Forest Demon Deacon. You're like, you just
Yeah.
kind of it's just not the same.
It's like Veron Haynes or something,
Yeah.
like just a solid player. Maybe he was
Mm.
on an NFL roster for a handful of years as a fullback, but like his
Mohamed Massaquoi.
senior year makes one of the iconic plays in Georgia football history. And it's like,
Mm.
he'll just forever be famous for that hobnail boot play. So it's
Right.
like, you transfer at the first sign of any sort of adversity 2 years in, you don't necessarily get that same experience. But it's these guys' decisions to make. It's funny because the MLB Hall of Fame in Cooperstown's kind of having the same issue in recent years
Hmm.
of guys always their little plaque always went in and had a team on the
Mm.
hat, and so it's like now in recent years there's the Greg Maddoxes, they're like Cubs and Braves, like Randy Johnson was Diamondback and Mariner. Like some guys had like really good careers, and some are going in like just a blank hat without any logo at all. So
I mean, we get weird stuff like Peyton like doesn't even like he's all Broncos all the time. You kind of like clearly there's a bad taste in his mouth still from that and how that ended. So it's like we're just pretending kind of like the Colts era did not happen because of how it ended with
so
Luck
Peyton's not even a Colts guy anymore.
no, like he's Broncos. I mean, he still lives in Colorado. He's a
Is that right?
Broncos guy. Seems like he identifies a lot more with the Broncos than he does the Colts these days. He had a
And
beef for
I've
a while.
always wondered about pro players from that perspective. If you're just like I feel like if you're a baseball player, you played for a few teams, you played for the Yankees, you're like, I'm a Yankee
Mm.
forever. Like it just seems like that type of thing. But I don't know. Maybe you're where you had the most success. I don't know. Steven Jackson, like he ended up in Atlanta, but I would think he's repping his Rams career more than what he did in Atlanta.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was just I don't know. It just seems like he favors the Broncos more. I don't know if that's how he feels personally, but it does seem like he's more, I don't know, to me anyway, that he feels that he's probably more Denver than Indy these days. But I don't know. Who knows? Matt Green, it's time for our main event here, our hot seat index for college football coaches. We have a lot here, 13 in total to get through. Some we had overlap, some we didn't. We'll break it down based on cool, warm, and hot going into the 2023 college football season. And I think we have to start, Matt Green, with Mike Norvell, the head football coach at Florida State University. Matt, what says you about where he currently sits going into next year?
Well, first things first, I'm not above admitting when I'm wrong. And I called for Mike Norvell's job last year. I said he was going to be the guy who lost his job after a third subpar season at Florida State, but that was not the case. So he is definitely trending cooler right now. I'm putting it at a 6 still, because 10-3, it was a great season, but I don't forget 3 and I can almost forget 3 and 6 COVID year and first season, but 5-7 in 2021, still not good. 10-3, we're going the right direction, but like, we haven't won the ACC Atlantic, I believe, is the conference, the division they're in.
Doesn't matter. It's ending.
It doesn't matter. They never have won the division. They haven't played for a conference title since he's been there. They haven't played for it since 2014, I don't think. So there's still a chance he could get fired. Like, I don't think it would happen this year, but like there's a huge step back and miss a bowl game that's like, okay, what are we doing? 4 years in, we haven't won the division, we haven't done anything. This is Florida State. This is not like, they don't have the same standards as some other programs. They should be a contender. So this is going to be the year that you start top 10, maybe top 5. Like, where's Florida State going to? I feel like they're going to be no lower than like 7 or 8 or something in the preseason polls. If you go 6-6 with this team this season, that's the type of thing that he could get fired. So I don't think there's a 0% chance of getting fired. That's why I got to put it a little bit up there. But I think they're trending in the right direction. So I think it's getting cooler. I think his seat is getting cooler, but he's not completely safe this year.
I'm going to agree with you a little bit. I think it's warm. Where like now he's got the talent. They have the number 1, I think, portal class this year. He's done really well in the portal last year. Jared Verse, and obviously got some big name tight ends. Got the tight end from Shorter. Got Jaheim Bell from South Carolina. It's a big year for Jordan Travis too, right? Like he was quietly one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
He's like top 3, top 5
he's a Heisman finalist, right?
Or something.
Yeah, he's going to be a Heisman finalist.
Or preseason favorite. I don't know if he's going to be a finalist.
Well, he should be. That's the whole thing. It's like he should be. And when you have those high expectations, I think this comes to the territory where, I mean, you have to go to Florida. LSU is in Orlando this year. You got to go to Boston College. Should be fine there. You got to go to Clemson. It's not a good year to have to go to Clemson. You get Miami at home. You got to go to Wake Forest. You got to go to Pitt. And you get VT and Duke at home. I don't know. I think hot seat is like, if they're 6-6, I think Norvell's probably out. Like, I think that's probably, there's expectations now where you've moved on, and they ended it on how many game win streak did they have? Did Florida State ended on? Do you remember?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, it seemed like once you feel like as a program that you've moved past like the building block era, right? Where like you've moved past it. Like we've been developing, we've been recruiting, we've been hitting the portal hard. We found our quarterback. This is where we're at. Like we feel really good now. This is now the time to win. And once expectations rise like this, I think it's really hard to sell it, because then you look at it as like, hey, if we move on from this guy, we have a really strong base. It's not the situation that Mike Norvell walked into when he got the job in Tallahassee when Willie Taggart was let go, right? Like that's a big part of this too, is that if they did make a move and they underachieved a little bit this year and went 6-6 or 7-5 or whatever, I think this is an attractive job now. And I think this is a really good roster top to bottom and should be the favorites going into the ACC season next year. I don't know. I think that's why the seat's warm. It's definitely not cool, because I think he has to win double-digit games next year. I think this is like a breakthrough year. Like you said, they're going to be a preseason top 6 team at worst, I think. Clemson's looking a little bit shaky. I think they'll be favored to win the ACC.
That was going to be my next question I asked you, is what does it take for the seat to get cooler next year?
I think he has to win the ACC.
I think he just has to get to the ACC championship.
I think he has to win it.
And the pressure is off a little bit.
Nah, I think he needs to win it. I think he needs to be in a New Year's Six game this year, at the very least. If that's a playoff or another kind of New Year's Six game.
I think that type of season like puts it to rest completely. I think that like buys him like a few years. I think just getting to the ACC championship, it's like, okay, now we're feeling good about this guy. Gets a little bit cooler going into 2024.
We'll see. I'm very interested to see because I'm very high on the Noles going into next year, and that'd be fun. I think college football, they're one of those programs. It's just more fun. Florida State's good, I think.
Yeah,
just more fun.
Yeah, and if I'm predicting, I'm predicting them to move this thing in the right direction too. I think the ACC is wide open.
There you go. Next up, James Franklin. He was on my list, not on yours, Matt Green. What do you think? Why is James Franklin not on your hot seat list? The green.
He just wasn't necessarily one of the first guys I thought of, but since you brought him up, I put his heat index at a 3 because it is there. I think when I'm going with this heat index, I'm thinking like the chances they get fired this year, like the chances of him getting fired are very, very low. So I think ultimately, like, you just look at what he's done, like the 11-2 this year, finishing top 10. I think that helped a lot. It's like you didn't beat Michigan, you didn't beat Ohio State. Like those two teams were in the college football playoff. Like we're not firing our coach at Penn State for that. So I think this was the kind of year, because I've talked about that 2016 season. It's like he's been milking that 2016 season for a long time. Like they did win the Big Ten that year, but we had the 7-6 2021. You can throw out the 4-5 2020 if you want, but it was still a really bad taste in your mouth for Penn State to go 4-5, even if it was the COVID year. 11-2, like another 11-2 type season. Like when I look, like I feel like Franklin's under like Kirby Smart type of pressure. It's not like real hot seat. Like I think, because I had an issue, I think it was maybe been going into 2021. People talking about like the coach under the most pressure. It was like guys who are gonna maybe get fired and Kirby Smart. It's like, okay, Kirby Smart's not getting fired. He's under a lot of pressure to win a national championship. Like James Franklin is under a lot of pressure to get past Ohio State and Michigan, but it's not this like you win 8-9 games and you're going to get fired or something. I don't think James Franklin's in that position at all, especially like his contract situation is a whole nother thing. Like I really don't think he's getting fired, but 11-2, I feel like he bought himself, a little bit, but if it's another 10-2 regular season where they lose to Michigan, Ohio State, I don't know that it gets cooler next year. I feel like you can start to, get in that, well, is this all we're going to be? Like Ohio State they lost CJ Stroud. They might take a step back next year. Like, Michigan they did just win the Big Ten. They seem like they're going to be good again next year. I don't know. Like Penn State seems like they have high expectations going into 2023. Like, I don't know what it would take for his seat to get cooler. What do you think it takes?
To get cooler, I think he has to split Michigan and Ohio State this year. He gets Michigan at home, which I think is better. I think Ohio State's just a bigger ask at this point. I think Michigan's gettable. They played him really well for the most part this past year until the bottom came out in the second half, if I recall correctly. Isn't that how it went? It was close to the half, and then Michigan put him on him in the second half. Am I remembering that correctly?
I think you're right. I think it was fairly close. It wasn't as close as the Ohio State game. Like that was like close going into like the fourth quarter. But
yeah, it was 16-14 at the half, and then Michigan outscored them 25-3 in the second half. So that was it. Okay. Yeah. So just a terrible second half, and that wasn't great. But Michigan obviously in the playoff, Ohio State in the playoff. Those were your only two losses last year if you're James Franklin. Like my only two losses were to two playoff teams, and he beats everyone he's supposed to beat. But my thing is, like, I've always maintained that Penn State's a top 10 job in the sport, maybe top 8, maybe top 7. You could sell me on that.
Ooh, I don't know about that.
Penn State's a good job, man. There's a lot of talent in that area. You can recruit the Northeast. You have the DMV. Pennsylvania's got some good players. You can get some of these North Carolina kids. You can go up and down the coast a little bit. Like, Penn State's a good recruiting spot, and they've recruited well. They're always in the blue chip ratio. I don't know. I think Penn State would
I think
a
there might
5.
be 4 or 5, maybe even more jobs in the SEC alone that are better than Penn State.
You don't have to deal with the Bamas and the Georgias of the world. I don't think Michigan's as stable as a lot of the premier programs around the SEC. So I don't know. I will say, Drew Aller, 5-star kid, probably the most talented quarterback Franklin's had under center to this point in Happy Valley. There's a lot of pressure on him to be great because there was Sean Clifford fatigue in Happy Valley this past year. And it's like he's been there for so long and he was good. Like he was good, not great, right? Like he was steady. He did enough to win a bunch of games at Penn State, but it's just not the kind of quarterback to break through and really get Penn State into the playoff conversation and, get them back to where they were the peak Joe Pa years. Like I don't know. I think his seat's warm. I don't think it's hot. But I think he needs to split one of those two to calm some doubters because he went 0-2 against them last year and he gets Michigan at home this year. He has the 5-star talented kid, talented roster. I think there's going to be some, hey, could Penn State sneak into the playoff conversation this offseason? I think Franklin needs to have one of those monumental wins, right? Like I think he needs to beat one of those two to keep Penn State fans happy, where it's like, what are we doing here? What's the point of any of this if we're just we've hit our ceiling of 10 wins every year and then we can't compete with Michigan and Ohio State? And I think what will happen is, like you said, I don't think he'll ever get fired. I think he'll just leave for like if USC ever opened up because Lincoln Riley took an NFL job or something. Like I don't think he ever gets fired there, but I could see a scenario where he maybe even NFL, like he looks at an NFL job and then gets and they have to go somewhere else. But we'll see.
He's 78-36
Yeah.
since being at Penn State. 4 different 11-win seasons. So like he's been really good. I don't know if he's been good enough to say like he's never going to get fired because I think they could get in that Mark Richt type of, okay, we're really good every year, but we want to be better than really good. We want to actually win the Big Ten. We want to beat Michigan, beat Ohio State. I think you nailed it personally. I think if they do beat Michigan or Ohio State, I think that's the only way it gets cooler. Like if I don't know if it gets hotter if they just go 10-2 and lose to both of them and finish ranked number 8 like they are this year. It's like it's just probably more of the same, and it might be a little warmer and just some of that frustration. Like, are we ever going to get better than these two schools? Especially look at the playoff. Like Michigan State's made the playoff. Michigan's now made the playoff twice. Ohio State's made it, I think, 5 times, made the national championship game twice. It's like, if you're sitting there as a Penn State fan and you're seeing all these other, like, that's really what did it in for Mark Richt. It's like, okay, everyone in the SEC that we compete against has won a title since us. Like, this isn't really acceptable. So it's different standards for different programs, but that's definitely going to affect it because I think they do have a legitimate shot to kind of expect a Big Ten championship in 2023. So I think that would be massive. And that would put it away, like put it to rest if they actually won the East this year. But I think what you're saying, it's definitely cooler if he can just have that one signature win.
For sure. Sam Pittman on my list, not on your list. Why do you think his seat is not at least going into 2023 a little warm, Matt Green?
Sam Pittman's a 1. He's a
really?
1 for me on the Heat index.
Is it because of the personality, or are you really a believer that last year was a blip and they're not sliding back into 5-7, 6-6, 7-5 purgatory for the next couple of years?
Part of it is, does Arkansas not want to be in 7-5 purgatory? Like, are they above that as a program? Like,
hey, they're a little everything school. Their baseball program legit. Eric Musselman and the basketball program, if they were healthy, they're the best team in college basketball. I think they take the big 3 pretty seriously.
Oh, without a doubt. But I'm just looking at Arkansas. Their last back-to-back winning seasons was 2014 and 2015 before Sam Pittman in 21 and 22. Like that's a while ago. And their last 9-win season was Petrino. Like, was it 2011? So Pittman in 3 years, he's taken a program that was just at the absolute bottom of the SEC. 3-7 year 1, 9-4 year 2, and 7-6 year 3. Like, KJ Jefferson also missed some games this past year. Like, I think that team was better than a 7-5 team just with what they put on the field, honestly. But I just from a heat index perspective, it's like Arkansas just loves Sam Pittman. I think that is a part of it, that this guy actually looks at Arkansas as a destination job, and he's made some good hires. Like the I'm blanking on his name right now. The offensive coordinator just left, Briles.
Kendall Briles.
That could, that could heat things up if the
Barry
offense
Odom also left.
That's true. But he left for a head coaching job. Yeah. So I think that's a little bit different. So, I mean, the defense was terrible anyway, so they needed a change there. But that's definitely, the defense took a big step back. So you could criticize the coordinator hires from that perspective. So it's definitely going to be really important that he gets these two coordinator hires right. But I mean, I think Arkansas is just a way more relevant program right now than they were before Pittman arrived. So I don't think it's gotten hot at all. I think after 2023, like I think it has to like miss a bowl game to get hotter, honestly.
They can miss a bowl game though next year. Look at this schedule.
No, they definitely could, but I'm saying they went 7-5 this year. Like if they go 7-5, 8-4 again next year, it's like there's nothing that what do Arkansas fans really expect them to be? Like, do you really expect them to consistently be better than Alabama or LSU? Like even Auburn, when they're good, is way better than Arkansas. Like their ceiling is way higher than Arkansas. Like
I wouldn't say their ceiling is
A&M. The A&M loss was kind of fluky, I feel like, last year. Like Arkansas was not a bad team. They're definitely disappointing for what they were supposed to be. But I don't know. I don't think that the seat's gotten that hot yet.
I would definitely not say it's hot yet. I just think I am curious to see if Arkansas fans are getting a little tired of like, hey, yeah, it's great that you love Arkansas and a super rootable guy. But like if we're going 500 every year, like we're going to get some Ed Orgeron vibes where it's like, how much of this was just you're a cool guy to grab a beer with, you're good energy guy, guys like being around you. But Kendall Briles and Barry Odom are now out the door, and we went to Dan Enos as the new OC and lost a lot of guys in the portal. We have to go to, let's see on the calendar. Yeah, they're at Ole Miss, A&M on a neutral site, at LSU, at Alabama, at Florida too. So, and they get Auburn at home. But I don't know. This schedule looks to me like a best case scenario, 8-4. But I'm gonna go more 6-6. And I don't know.
We'll that see. SEC West. What do you think it takes for his seat to be cooler?
9-3, 10-2.
See, I wouldn't say 10-2. I would say 9-3 plus 8-4. Even 8-4
is probably safe.
Signature
yeah, 8-4 is safe.
8-4, and someone you played was in the top 10, and you had the whole field rushing and that whole sort of thing, like some sort of signature win on the season. I think 8-4 is like we're good with Sam Pittman. Maybe win the bowl game and go 9-4. Like I think that's all it would really take, because I don't think Arkansas necessarily has the same, national championship or bust standard. And I think Sam Pittman is a good coach, but we'll see. It's still early in his tenure.
For sure. Steve Sarkisian, Matt Green, we both had on the list. Why is he on the hot seat for you?
For me, he's on the hot seat because it's Texas, and he hasn't really done that much yet. Like Tom Herman, you look at what Tom Herman did. He went 32-18 in 4 years. First year 7-6, 10-4, finished ranked 9th, 8-5, finished ranked 25th, 7-3 COVID year, finished ranked 19th. They fired that guy. So it was like Sarkisian right now went 5-7 year 1, 8-5 year 2, and TCU just played in the national championship game. You can't tell me that didn't rattle every single Texas booster out there that TCU is the first Big 12 program to win a college football playoff game. Like not Texas, not Oklahoma. TCU just did that. Texas people aren't the most rational group. All right. Like I don't feel like Charlie Strong, he had like 3 straight losing seasons and they got rid of him. Like that was a quick trigger, but there was really no sign of improvement. Like Tom Herman was not really doing a bad job. And now you look at Texas, we were just talking about Florida State. Texas is going to be preseason top 10, like probably 10th at like the lowest. Like there's so much hype around Texas right now. If they go 7-5, I think this thing gets real hot. Heat index, I got it at a 5 right now. because I don't think he probably doesn't get fired, but I don't think it's like impossible. Like they miss a bowl game, I think they could just go ahead and fire him, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I think just with Texas, it's just I don't know. It's a tricky spot. I can't feel too comfortable about Texas.
Well, we went 8-4 last year, and we also don't know their schedule yet, right? Like all we know is Bama and a couple other non-conference, right? They haven't released what Texas's schedule is going to be going into next year, right? I don't even know.
Well, I mean, we know we don't know home and road, but I mean, they play everyone in the Big 12, right? So who do they play?
Well, no, we don't know that because the Big 12 is expanding, so we don't know who all they play in the Big 12 yet.
Oh shoot, yeah, you're right. So that's a good point. So I'm not sure how they're. I guess they got to still decide the playoff or the conference championship the same way, even though everyone's not going to be playing everyone. Yeah. Kind of how the Pac-12 just changed things last year. Someone could get a raw deal potentially.
For sure. I think 9-3, 10-2 is what he has to do. Probably 10-2 to keep the seat. And like you said, like Texas is different, and Herman had success there. Charlie Strong had success early.
You're saying 9-3, 10-2 to do what?
To get it cool. Like I think it's cool if he's 9-3, 10-2. Because you've got Arch Manning in the building now. Like I think he's gonna get some time. And like if Arch is like a package deal with Sark, where it's like, no, I want to be developed by Steve Sarkisian, former NFL OC, all that kind of stuff. Like I'm part of the deal. I think he's fine. Quinn Ewers has to take some strides though, because he did not pop off the page this past year. But they get Isaiah Nair, the Wyoming transfer who tore, I think his ACL early last year, so he never played it down for them. You get him in there. You get A.D. Mitchell. You have a lot of talent out wide. A lot more to work with at Texas this year than last year. But they also lose two of their leading backs. So I think it's going to be a very different offense. But I also think we saw a lot. The biggest thing for me is like the defense looks a lot better. The defense looks like it's a physical, tough front that we have not seen from Texas in a long time. So I think they're moving in the right direction. But I do think it's Texas, and it's one of the 3 jobs around the country where your expectations or I guess 4 jobs where your expectation should be if you don't make the playoff, you have a lot to explain to do year over year because of the recruiting, because of the NIL, because of all the advantages that you have. They are allowed to have extremely high expectations, and it's Georgia, it's Alabama, it's Texas, and it's USC. Those 4 never have any excuses in 2023 and beyond of not competing at the highest of high levels. And if you can't do it, then you got to find somebody else because the resources and everything else is there to do that.
Well, and I think to get it cooler, honestly, I think in most years, if Oklahoma was what they are, I think getting to the Big 12 championship is all it would take to get it cooler. But I feel like with what the Big 12 currently is, I think winning the Big 12 championship is really the only way that it gets like actually cooler going into 2024, because the Big 12 just kind of looks wide open right now. And like you're saying, like we're Texas, we have more talent than anybody in this conference. Like if TCU can do what they just did in year 1 with Sonny Dykes, like you got 3 years now, Sark, like if they're talking to him, like this is year 3, like we expect you to win this conference, because we don't just expect you to win this conference. Like you said, we expect to be in the college football playoff. Like we're the University of Texas. Like we might as well have invented this sport. Like, so I don't know. I think there is a lot of pressure on Sarkisian, like more than just hot seat pressure. Like it is that like we have to clearly be going to that next level.
For sure. Jimbo Fisher, Matt Green made both of our lists. I still don't even know how strong. I'm going to say it's still cool because of the buyout is still just like part of me is like, I don't know if we're even close to that point where it's like still feasible on that regard to just eat so much of that buyout money if you were to make a move. But I don't know. I mean, he should be on the list. Like, I think it should be hot. What do I think it is in that building? Probably warm, but I think it should be nuclear based on that last class and how many guys are out the building from that class and where they're at as a program. I mean, we'll see what by Petrino taking over this offense, but I would agree. Why would you say it's smoking hot for Petrino, or for Petrino too, but for Jimbo Fisher going into 2023?
The buyout was the only reason I didn't put it at a 9. I got it at an 8, honestly, because I don't think the buyout matters that much. Like, they just missed a bowl game. Like, that's just, they were knocking on the door of the college football playoff in 2020. And that is something that Jimbo Fisher did. You know, that's like an accomplishment that he did actually have that we are kind of quick to forget. But Kevin Sumlin got fired after 51-26 in 6 years. Like, Jimbo Fisher right now is going in. Is this year 6? Going into year 6. And he's 39-21. Like, obviously he's missing a few games because of COVID, but like, this guy, and he took over, the program he took over is a whole nother level than the program that Kevin Sumlin took over. Like, Kevin Sumlin had Johnny Manziel. They were producing NFL offensive tackles every other year. Like, they were putting what's his name in the league, Myles Garrett, going first overall. Like, A&M was a big time program, winning 8 or 9 games basically every year. I think Sumlin is actually winning 8 games like every year, but before Sumlin, they were 4-8, missing bowl games. Like, they weren't this team that had high expectations. So for what they are with Jimbo Fisher, the way they've recruited, if they miss another bowl game, this man is done. So like, I don't think there's any way you can rationalize him not getting fired if they miss a bowl game. So if I'm just looking at like what it takes to actually cool it, because like, this is year 6, right? Like, if he improves on last year, like, what is that really going to do? Like, if he goes 7-5 this year and they go to the Independence Bowl, it's like, are A&M fans feeling good now? Like, I don't really think so. I think you might not.
They were sniffing the playoff 2-3 years ago now. That's
what I'm saying. So I think you have to be at least like 10 wins, I think, is what it takes to like cool things off for Jimbo Fisher. Because even if they go 9-3, it's like maybe you have some good wins in the SEC West if you're going 9-3. So that's enough to, you know, feel a little better. But you're still like, we just signed the number 1 class of all time like 2 years ago. At that point, it'll be 2 years ago. It's like these guys are supposed to be playing. Obviously, some of those guys transferred and things like that. But I don't know. At some point, we have to see the fruits of the labor. It's like, this is year 6 now. Like, I think it's going to take finishing in the top half of the SEC West, which is at least 9-10 wins.
This schedule is not good. They come here this fall, Matt Green. Like, they're coming to Tennessee. They're going to lose that game. Like, Tennessee is going to beat Texas A&M in Neyland next year. But they got to go to Ole Miss.
What's the date on that?
October 14th.
Oh, nice. That should be a good one, man. That sounds like a nice 3:30 CBS kickoff.
It is, but you know what sucks is the week prior is Bama on the or no, that's their week prior is Bama third. Yeah, no, that would be third Saturday in October. So that would be Bama's after
the week before Bama, Tennessee.
No, we play so we would play, because if it's the 14th, then it's the third Saturday of October. So yeah, they would play after that one. Tennessee would play Alabama the following week.
Gotcha.
On the road. So that's kind of back-to-back haymakers. But I mean, you get Auburn at home, but you got to go to Miami. Miami might be a lot better next year, Matt Green. Like, they're going to go to Miami. They go to LSU. I mean, I don't know. This schedule, Arkansas in a neutral site, this looks like 7-5 to me again. Or like, I don't see the 10-win breakthrough. I didn't see enough from Connor Weigman, but I guess it just depends. Like, all of it's going to come down to how good Bobby Petrino is as a play caller right away. Like, can he turn Connor Weigman into a top tier SEC quarterback right out of the gate? If he can, then yeah, 10 wins is possible. They have a bunch of defensive talent. They can do that, but it's gonna, we're going to see if Bobby Petrino is a miracle worker on that front. Brent Venables, we both have on the list.
He seems like a guy who's really coaching more for his job than anyone else on this list. That like it's a threshold.
Wait, you think Jimbo Fisher is coaching more for his job than anybody else on this list?
I think so, for sure. Because I mean, he's just, does 6 wins keep his job? Like, missing a bowl game, he's getting fired. 6 wins, maybe. 7 wins, maybe. Like, I think 8 wins is probably like safe that he's not getting fired. But anything under that, like 7-5, like, I'm not guaranteeing he doesn't get fired. Like, they got a lot of resources, getting paid a lot of money. They fired a guy for doing better than 7-5 a lot of times. So I don't know. I think the pressure is definitely on Jimbo this year.
Interesting. Okay. Fine with me. Brent Venables, on the hot seat, yes or no for you?
It's not quite hot yet, but Oklahoma doesn't go 6-7. So for that reason, he does register on the heat index. I got him at a 4 because you don't even know that he can be a head coach yet. So there's still some of that question mark. It's like, especially just from an optics, from a narrative standpoint, that might be completely false, but just kind of how it looks on the surface. This guy wasn't a coach, was the hottest coordinator out there for a decade and never jumped at being a head coach. It wasn't until the Clemson got kind of worse that he did leave and become a head coach. It's kind of odd timing. So you start to wonder if this guy takes a program like Oklahoma, which was more of a rebuilding job than it really kind of got credit for, because it doesn't, when you look at the win-loss record, doesn't really factor in the fact that what's his name? Riley took half the roster, or obviously not half the roster, but took all the key players with him. So it was a little more of a
quarterback
rebuild.
Was taken with him in that regard. He turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah, so that obviously is part of it, but I think there's just some pressure because you still don't really know if Venables is that level of coach. So I think 10 wins is really what it would take to like, okay, we feel good about Venables, because I think there's something about Oklahoma fans, like, it is the Big 12. Like, yeah, we go 8-4, 9-3. Like, that's a better season, but we expect to be winning this conference. So 9-3 is probably the bare minimum that, like, at least he gets the program back on track.
That's fair. I'm curious. Well, here's the thing too. It's like when you're struggling out of year one, my question is like, all right, what's the recruiting like? And it's like Venables has killed it with this class. So didn't they finish in the top 5, if I recall correctly, with this class, the 2023 one? Am I misremembering that?
I think you're right. Yeah, they're right up there.
Because they got the safety last minute who, like, he went to like 3 different ones. Remember, he was at Notre Dame and then Oregon, and then and Oregon thought they got him, and then he ended up at Oklahoma. What's his name? And Jaxson Arnold's looks like he's pretty highly ranked too. What is the kid's name?
Yeah, they got the 4th ranked class.
Yeah, there you go.
Right here, Peyton Bowen.
That's it.
The safety. Yeah.
So that's big, and I think that's the other part of it. It's just like 4th ranked class. I'm not as concerned. You're gonna Venables
signed 3 5-stars in this class.
Yeah, I think they're gonna be fine. I'm not worried about Brent Venables. I will say, is Ted Roof still calm? Is he still DC? Is that still a thing? Because you probably don't want that. You don't want that in 2023. He's still the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach. So I don't know. That's a little suspect, but they should be fine. I'm not concerned. I think his is cool. He's the only one I have right now is cool to me. I think he's going to be fine for a while. We'll see.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the cooler ones on the list.
Yeah. We're going to break this up into 2 so we don't rush through the other ones, because I think there's some spicy stuff we have on some other names like Mel Tucker or Shane Beamer that I don't want to rush through with this pod. So we'll end on this one. Another spicy one. We talked about his team a little bit at the top of the show with Rashada not making the trip to Gainesville and will be playing college football for somebody else in 2023 and beyond. Billy Napier, Matt Green, how hot is his seat for you going into year 2 in Gainesville?
It's definitely a little warm. Like it's warmer than I definitely was expecting it to be, just for a guy who's a first-year head coach, right? Like, you just look at where the program was, like, when he took over. Like, it's hard to say, right? Like, exactly where the program was, because Dan Mullen won a lot of games, but it's like, it was just, I don't know. It's just like so sour on the way out. Just one bad season and he's gone, basically. So the perception of Florida is that, like, they're this top 10 program that he just took over, and then year 1 he goes 6-7. Like, I don't think that actually is what Florida is right now, because I think Dan Mullen was really slacking that hard behind the scenes, and the level of recruiting that Florida was doing was just not the level that they're used to. So I think he has some leeway there, and the Rashada stuff might not even be really his fault, but as the head coach, he ends up being the one that's blamed for it. So I put Napier at a 7, honestly, because I started to a 6, but I'm looking at Mike Norvell, and it's like his seat, while Norvell's been around for a few more years, his seat feels warmer than Norvell's right now. Like, because Norvell at least is coming off at 10-3, and it's trending cooler. Like this is definitely trending warmer, and it's just like part of it. Like you look at last year, like there's some games I'll give him credit. Like the Tennessee game, they were only in that game because of Billy Napier. Like they went like 5 for 5 on 4th down or something. Like they had the onside kick. Did they have like a surprise onside kick in that game, like early on, or like a fake punt or something like that? Like there was a like just some specific coaching moves that like kept them in that game, like that you had to give him credit for. And if they just kind of, went like along with the script and just kind of finished the season 7-5, 8-4, like they were kind of trending to do, we wouldn't even be talking. We'd be talking about them being a sleeper in the SEC East next year. But the way they finished the season, just the loss to Vanderbilt, just getting absolutely embarrassed by Oregon State, like, and obviously the bowl game, say what you want about the bowl game, it's still not a good look to just look uncompetitive on the field. So to see them finish 6-7, I think it's definitely heating up a little for Napier.
Yeah, I think it's heating up. I think Florida fans are pretty upset. And part of it, like you said, it kind of sucks for Napier because I think a lot of it's not even in his control, like what's going on a little bit. So I think he's the staff's good on both sides of the ball. I think it's not even that. I think he's a good coach. He did a lot right at ULL. Like he was a great coach, won a bunch of ball games for the Raging Cajuns, obviously on the staff with Saban years ago. But I just look at it, it's just trending the wrong way. Like this just looks like a mess that he's not going to get out of. And I think what we talked about at the beginning, where it's like Florida's just normally a mess when it's not Urban Meyer and Steve Spurrier roaming the sidelines. That's just been mostly what it is. And I think Norvell and Florida State figuring it out has not helped things. Miami obviously killing it in NIL and recruiting. That's not helped things. Clemson's obviously been in the state of Florida for a while now, and they're winning a lot of these battles. You have Ohio State coming down there winning a lot of these battles now. You just got Colorado coming into Florida and taking Cormani McClain. Like, my gut tells me it's not going to end well. Like, my gut says it's warm, and with Graham Mertz and Jack Miller maybe as your quarterback room next year, like that's 4-8. That's like 5-7 max, and that's a rough spot to be in. The Gators, I don't think that's going to stand. I don't think they'll fire him after year 2, but it means it feels like a staff change year, right? Where like they underperformed. He has to fire his guys. The OC season, like we have to do like a full on like save your job, do whatever we got to do to go into year 3. Like, hey, if this doesn't work in year 3, I'm out of here. And that's just kind of where I think things are heading, unfortunately, for the Gators and Gator fans. It's just, I think this is a marriage that's not going to work. So I'm going to say it's warm, and I think it gets hot going into 2024 if they go 5-7, 6-6.
Yeah, and 7 might be a little too high because he's most likely not going to get fired this year. But if they miss a bowl game, like is definitely a possibility. Like you look at the schedule, like at Utah and Tennessee in the first 3 weeks of the year, like McNeese State and Charlotte, they should start 2-2. But like at Kentucky, even at South Carolina, obviously it was someone they destroyed last year at home. But then you finish, they don't have any of those November cupcakes, so you just finish with Georgia, Arkansas, at LSU, at Missouri, Florida State. I don't know how many of those final
feels
5.
Like 2 and 3 to me.
After that bowl game, those final 5, I think 2 and 3 is almost the best case scenario for those final 5. So, you can find 5 or 6 or 7 losses, I think, on this schedule. So yeah, I think it could definitely get real hot coming in, and especially coming into year 3 and not even really knowing who your quarterback is at that point. I think that's an important position to have to figure out. And the Jaden Rashada stuff really, leaves them in a bad position. But, they do have the 5-star for the class of 2024 committed, DJ Lagway, I want to say is his name. So he could be the guy coming in, and, maybe Florida gets a top 10 recruiting class. And I think what it's going to take to cool his seat, I think is a signature win. I think he's got to have like an 8-4 with like a signature win. Obviously, beating Georgia isn't really realistic at this point, but if you somehow beat Tennessee next year in Knoxville next year,
no, it's in
if you can
Florida.
beat Tennessee, that'd be massive next year. If you could end the season beating Florida State, like that would just be absolutely huge. So if you have go 8-win and 1 win in one of those 3 rival games, I think that, I mean, count 4 rival games with LSU included too, like Georgia, Tennessee, Florida State, and LSU. If they win 8 games and win one of those games, I think you could see the seat cool down a little bit.
Also, play Miami again, you cowards. What are we doing here? Play
Central
Miami.
Florida.
Man, Central Florida. Put any of it. Like, how is this not constantly on the schedule? What are we doing? Like, why is South Florida, Central Florida, FIU? Why aren't they always playing their cupcake games against? Like, why aren't they?
Fair, they don't have many out of conference spots to work with. Like these teams that have the locked ACC game, like they only have the 3 different games every year, and I mean, playing Utah, they haven't done that. So I'm gonna congratulate Florida, applaud Florida for actually
on the early loss next year,
scheduling the big time home and home. I think they have a few of them coming up, like maybe in Arizona State or something coming up, Colorado in the next couple of years, which
might take that one off the calendar.
They might rethink that one, but yeah. So I'm glad to see Florida going out to Utah next year.
There you go. Well, like I said, we went through 7 here. We got 13 total on the list, and we'll do part 2 on the next show and more news and notes that we can get through. But it's an off season. We got time. We got stuff to parse through. I'd rather not rush through it. We already went kind of long for this one. So appreciate you guys tuning in, as always, for the full ride here on the Chase Thomas podcast. Matt Green, thank you as always for making the time. Find me on Twitter, Matt_W_Green, all that good stuff. Give him a follow today if you have not already done so. As always, we do these on Sunday evenings only during the off season for college football. Matt Green, always a pleasure, my friend. And I will talk to you next week.
Yes, sir.